Welcome, 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 One Nation Tribal Alliance, friends and family, brothers and sisters, near and far. Today, Eve, Howard, and I are back again. We're going to talk about Native Talks. And we just want to talk about a little bit of everything of what we were told or taught or learned being a child. I know Eve and I are a decade apart. She's in her young 30s and I'm in my 60s. So, you know. But anyway, you want to say greetings before we get carried away?
Yes. Yes. Buju, thank you for having me again on here. I look forward to this every week now. Um, some of the things that, I grew up, and you asked me one of the questions you asked me were like, do you spend a lot of time with elders? And when I was younger, I did because my aunts and uncles and even my cousins were all older than me. I was like the late in life baby, so I was like the youngest everywhere we went till about age two. And then my sister had a baby. So I had a nephew when I was 2 years old. So I've always been an auntie. And, I always had like a little trail of kids behind me. I was the oldest one. And we just kind of grew up and, we would go to powwows. And I remember my nephew, he was, he had green eyes and he had kind of a honey blonde hair. But he was out there and he'd be dancing. He'd have his little cowboy boots on and stuff, and I never really looked at him and thought, geez, you don't look like me. He was my nephew. So, I mean, to me, it was, family. Yeah, he
True.
didn't. Yeah. And that's like probably half of my family now is very, integrated and very mixed. So, yeah, even my own kids, I got like three of them that have green eyes, which is unusual because
Wow.
I thought about that and I was like, my parents had brown eyes and their parents had brown eyes and their parents had brown eyes. Where did that come in? So it was a lot of different, bloodlines and stuff, kind of a mixture.
Mm.
But we were talking about sayings and stuff, and I remember Grandma Shagabe would say, when my kids were little and they'd get their shoes on to go somewhere, and she'd say, "Oi," she'd say, "Your shoes are on the wrong feet." She goes, "You're gonna meet a bear," and I remember my kids would be like just sitting there crying on the floor, like, "I don't want to meet a bear," so. I mean, those little sayings and stuff, they just kind of, and they integrate into the next generation. So, I mean, every time I see somebody that has their shoes on, but on the wrong feet, I'll be like, oh, you're going to meet a bear, you know? He said, you better put your shoes on the right feet. But there was like a lot of different things that my parents didn't really teach me. It was like something just being around other indigenous families and, growing up with kids, that eventually grew up and, went down the medicine man path. And they would tell me when it's thunderstorming, you cover up your mirrors in your house. So, I noticed one time I didn't do that. And I was like laying there and I totally forgot about this mirror behind my door. And I had the door kind of 45-degree angle open. And I was laying there and I kept seeing these flashes of like purple and like blue and like these different colors. And I was like, where's that coming from? And it was like storming out. And my husband at the time was like, well, you didn't cover your mirror back there. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing the reflection of whatever's in the mirror with the energy that's outside. It's showing, it's like flashing on the wall, and then you're seeing that flash. So I like got up and I like covered up the mirror with a towel. But it's like cover your mirrors, cover your windows when it's like storming, And I mean, I guess I just did it and I never really asked why. Do you know why?
Hmm.
Is it the energies? Seeing stuff that you're not supposed to see? That was
Yeah.
always the thing.
Wow. Wow. Well,
Yeah.
uh, my generation, I talk back. One thing I was, I guess, noticing is that, as I was growing up, all these um, elders that taught me, or shared their knowledge with me, because I started at a very young age, at 7 years of age, I started. And they kept looking at me and they says, "Oh, you're a cradle board baby, cradle board baby." I said, "What the heck do they mean I'm a cradle? How do they know I was raised in a cradle board? You know, these old
Mm-hmm.
folks don't even come around my house, but yet they know I'm a cradle board." I said, so finally, there's this one elderly man. His name was Tala Pinahopai, and he was a blind man. He was blind at birth,
Mm-hmm.
and he was very intelligent or well gifted because even though he was totally blind, had no eyes in his socket, uh, because that's the way he used to describe himself. I'm blind. I'm not, but he would actually walk around the village unescorted. Now he'd have his cane, but and then if he got lost, he would stop at somewhere and he would go up like against somebody's wall or wall of a house or building, whatever, and he'll clap. He'll clap. And with the echo of the sound, he knew exactly where he was and he walked back home. He just didn't walk like 10 yards from the house and come back. He was like all over the village. He knew the village, the layout of the village to where when he would clap, he would listen. And I kept wondering, I said, how in the world does he do that? And then finally I realized that, you know, working with a lot of people with disability, like if they were blind, their hearing would be perfect. But if
Mm-hmm.
they're deaf, their sight and their sense and their smell would be good. So what you got four senses, you know, hearing, sight, taste, and feel. If one of them goes up, the other three enhances, is what my elders used to tell me. And, so they used to tell me also is this prepare yourself because as you get older, one of your senses is going to go out and you have to prepare yourself to, learn to adapt to it, you know. And I said, okay, okay. But going back to the cradle board, I always wonder how they do it. How do they know I'm a cradle board baby? And so finally I asked him, the elder that was blind, I said, what? How do you know I am a cradle board baby? And he said, well, the way you sit. And I said, how can you tell the way I sit when I mean, you can't even see me, you know? And he said, well, I know, I can feel it, how you're sitting, your posture. Even sitting on the ground, I used to be straight up back when my back was stronger. I would sit straight up on the floor or on a bench. I didn't have to have a back to recline back on it because, I was in training and you're not allowed to have a back support on your back when you're in training because if you fall asleep, you don't fall over. So,
Yeah.
but, but he said that, and plus, you're not wild. I said, what do you mean I'm not wild? He says, well, cradle board babies are disciplined, more disciplined than the babies that are not raised on cradle board. I said, why do you say that? He said, because they're strapped. They strap them down,
Mm-hmm.
and you're strapped down, and you feel more comfortable being strapped down when you go to sleep, and when you wake up, and you feel strapped down, everything's okay because your mama's nearby
Mm-hmm.
because you're strapped down. And they said, and I said, well, why is one I think on the left, why is there only three straps and four on the right? And he says, you don't remember? I said, no, I don't. He said, because on a male, that's where they took the rib out and gave it to the female. And I said, wait a minute, I've heard that in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I thought to myself, oh, he's just making it up. But then he gave me a story about that too. I mean, all these things have stories behind of what they were teaching us. And so when we understood what they're trying to tell us, um, you know, every everything that we would want to question, there was always a story behind it. And so, I said, wow, credible baby. And I started looking around and I could tell kids maybe up to my nephew's generation, I guess, like my nephews. One of my nephew was a cradle board baby till he was like 5 years old. 5 years old, he walk around with his cradle board, on his back. He woke up from a nap. He walk around. I said, somebody take him off that cradle board. And then I wake up. He said, Grandpa, can you take the cradle board off me? And he wake up and now, I said, okay, okay. So I take it off and I said, he says, how do you feel? I says, it feels good. And then he'll stretch.
Hmm.
He'll stretch. And that's what they would tell us. He said, when you get off the cradle board, you have to stretch. So you're welcoming all the blessings in your life. And all these blessings are out here. The Creator's blessings are out here. Mother's blessings are out here. So when you stand on Mother Earth in front of the Creator, you accept the blessing. So they stretch. They would stretch. Those kids would stretch and all that. And I said, wow, that's interesting. And to this day, you can actually tell who was a cradle board baby and who wasn't because those cradle board babies are very disciplined. They're quiet and they only speak when spoken to.
Hmm.
And I said, but I do have some nieces and nephews that are wild. And I said, I wish I says, well, nobody made a cradle board for them. I said, man, it's never too late. 20 years old, it's never too late. No, but
Right? My son's like 33, make him a cradle board.
yeah, but like one of the things that I teach about about love is that I tell a lot of parents that they have kids 16, 17, they're in their rebel years and all that. And I said, before you send them out, if they're having a fit or anything like that, before you send them out, I said, you grab that child. I don't care how old they are. You grab your child and you hold them and just hug them and tell them you love them. Not just once, but repeat yourself over and over again until you feel them really relax and accept your love spiritually and physically. And they'll calm down. Because, if they're into what the elders were telling me about that is that when they are in their rebel years, they're seeking love. They're not getting love from the family. And that's what my elders said. So when you're kids, and I always tell my kids I love them. I don't care how old they are. I love them. I hug them,
Hmm.
and everything. And and you know, me and my brother, there's only two of us left. There was four of us, but there's two of us now. We hug each other, and everything. And 60-year-old men, bear hug each other, you know, but that tells us that we do love each other as siblings and our sister.
Right. And
And
there's
so,
the open spot right here too, your little Care Bear area. When you hug somebody, you're lining that up, so it's like connecting.
yeah,
So, and they don't do that when my parents were in the residential schools. They were raised by nuns and priests, so they didn't have that connection. That they didn't have that hugging, that closeness. And so therefore I was like raised without that, but I was like, that's not how I want to be. I want to be a very touchy, huggy person. So yeah, and I could tell with my parents, I go up and hug them and stuff, and my mom would just stiffen, just straight as a board. She didn't like anyone coming up and showing, hugging her like that unless she was initiating it. So I think that, not only did they sever a lot of the connections between people, and a lot with the language and traditions and stuff, but they also severed that connection, that human, you know, that need for closeness. They severed that.
yeah, it's really to see the change, and I always tell everybody that I'm glad I was born in this generation. This generation was exciting, and the excitement ain't over yet because one of my first Christmas gift that I got from my grandma was a little AM transistor radio that had a 9-volt battery on it. That little thing that you as a battery tester when you stick your tongue out. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good battery. He is
It's
a
still
better tester. You know,
good.
and
That's how
then
they had them back in the day.
them little bitty batteries. It says, ah, yeah, it's
Hmm.
good. It's still good. But we had a ways of testing stuff, but that's one of them. I don't know. We're giving away the secret now, but you know, uh, you had the AM radio, and we had two radio stations, actually three. One that we could catch all day long, all night long, which is out of Gallup, New Mexico. It was KGAK, and that radio still exists in AM 13 or yeah 1330 on the AM dial. And the other one was KOMA out of Oklahoma City,
Hmm.
and the other one was KFI out of Los Angeles. And those two radio stations, you only can catch them at night, and or if there's no storms coming across. But with them radios, you can tell where the storm is because you can hear the line, while you're
Yeah.
jamming out, yeah. But we went from AM to FM, and when I remember we got first FM radio station in Gallup, boy, I did not have a FM. I was throwing a fit, and then my grandma finally said, "All right, we'll get you an FM radio." So I got an AM FM transistor radio,
I forgot
and
about
then
that.
then we graduated into 8 track, big
I remember
old eight
that.
tracks, big old things in your pocket. You can only put two in your pocket, and you was a master fixing them things up, They get out of here, you get master fixing those 8 tracks up, and you know, and then it went to CD. No, it went to
Uh,
yeah, it went to CDs,
Tapes.
tapes, yeah, regular
Yeah.
cassette tapes,
The the
yeah, cassette,
about that
and
big little cassette
yeah,
tapes. Yeah.
yeah, and then it went into the records. We had
Oh yeah,
uh
I think records for came first. Vinyl came first
yeah,
after
vinyl,
before tapes. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and then because those 33, we had actually had three speeds of records: 45 RPM,
Remember that?
33 RPM, and 78 RPM. 78 was in between the little 45s and the big LPN. They were about medium size, but they're size of a plate, you know, not like the you know, big plate, like a
Hmm.
regular plate, and they used that required a faster speed, on a phonograph, and we got that, and then we went into, like I said, uh, cassette tapes. Then we went into MP3s,
Hmm.
CDs, and now you don't even have to buy any music. You can just download
Stream
it
it.
off the air,
Yeah.
and you know, quadraphonics. I remember my brother had to have a quadraphonic, and I said, what's the difference?" He said, "Oh, listen to this," and he get his all speakers all set up in his room. He said, "You got to lay in the middle of the floor." So I laid in the middle of the floor and let him play. He had some quadraphonic tape playing all that, and it used to sound pretty cool. I mean, we used to enjoy that. So he'd have a chair in the middle of his room. I said, "What's that chair for?" Well, when I listen to quadraphonic music, I just sit there, and just jam out and easy, because it was, quadraphonics were pretty good radios back then. But then we got. I mean, like I said, then nowadays you just download it everywhere. You go on YouTube and find those old records and all that,
Hmm.
and so this was my year. I mean, this is the good time to be alive, I guess I would say, on Earth. But so I don't know what else you got to share about that.
I remember like phones,
Oh,
not
phones.
only like the regular landline phones when everybody had them, I mean, as a kid, I remember I was always on the phone. My dad was like, well, I don't know, I don't want you. I'd be like, Dad, don't answer the phone. I want my friends to like, no, God, I live with my parents, I'm like 13. But he got me my own phone number which was different than a teen line, so I had like my own ringtone. So it would come in two rings and I would know what was for me. So then I would pick it up. But it was strange because it went from that. And then, a lot of kids had their own lines. And then I actually cleaned out my dad's RV a couple of years ago and I pulled out this bag and I was like, what is this? And my kids are with me. And they were probably like teenagers. So it might have been even 20 years ago. And I pulled it out. It was like one of those, the phone in a bag.
Bag phone.
And my kids were like, "What is that?" They thought it was, and then there was like one of the phones that had it was like a car phone, but it was
Hmm.
like, you it had these cords. And they were like, "That is so funny. Oh my gosh, that is so retro." And they just thought it was so hilarious. And I'm just like, "What do you?" And then there was like my dad's first cell phone, was probably about this big, and they were like, "Oh my God, that's huge." They were like rolling around on the floor laughing because they thought it was so funny. And it was just like, I mean, then even my phones, you can see the growth of the technology. Going
Yeah.
from like those old Nokia phones everybody had, in either red, blue, or black. And then, we all had the same little phone thing with a little plastic carrier on it. And then they just started to become, I was almost like a leap or a jump in technology there for going from what SMDA to, 2G, 3G, 4G.
Yeah. I got as far as five, and then I carried that five i5 phone for a long time.
Hmm.
And up until probably about 2, 3 years ago, when they come to upgrade, it just said, "Get a new phone, can upgrade to this new features."
Hmm.
So I took it in there and I took it to well, because I got it with Altel. Altel got bought out by Verizon,
Hmm.
and so I had to take it into a Verizon. I took it to the dealer and I said, "Look, I need an upgrade on my phone." The salesman looked at it and he just started laughing. He said, "How long have you had this phone?" I said, "Oh, I don't know, 12 years." He said, "You got to be kidding me. He's still going?" I said, "Well, I can't look at what he's saying." He says, "Well, cannot upgrade anymore." You know,
I keep waiting that I have an iPhone 8 and I'm waiting for it to like be telling me, "I'm sorry, you're gonna have to go and just break down and go get a new phone."
yeah, yeah. And so I said, "All right." So I took my iPhone in there, and finally I went from 5 to 12. And you talk
Wow.
about learning new technology.
Hmm.
I mean, I was lost. I said, "Man, how do you make a call on this?" Oh, that you press that little phone, then the numbers come on, and you fetch that little. I'm learning. I'm learning. Yeah, I said, "Okay, we'll see how it goes." And oh man, so again, this was a great time to be alive, as they would say.
Oh yeah.
And phones, and well, I even remember, you know, back when we were kids, when bikes came. Bikes came
Right.
to the reservation. Everybody had to have a radio bike. Radio is red bike, radio flyer,
Hmm.
because they had radio wagons, back then, but everybody had to have a radio flyer bike. And you were cool when you had one of those. So we used to go to and my grandpa used to take us to the dump, and we go buy our fine old bikes that people would throw away. And we take them home, and man, we were mechanics. Well, we put one bike together, get about three bikes, and put it all together, and you had yourself a bike. And
Hmm.
back then, we used to have choppers. Make choppers, break the forks off and add it onto that, pound it in there, and real good, and glue it in there. But the glue didn't work with a hoop because you have to weld it on. But we didn't know any better, we're kids,
Hmm.
you know. So we just pound that fork in there, and your fork be about 3 times as long, and you put your tire on, and boy, you had a chopper. You'd be riding that thing, and if you didn't pound it in hard enough, and you hit a bump, but that fork
Oh
came out,
no,
boy,
yeah.
boom, you'd wipe out big time. But
I really think that we did get the best of both worlds.
yeah.
We grew up and not having cell phones, where we knew as soon as it got dark and as soon as the street lights came on, you went home because it was dinner time.
Hmm.
But I mean, it was like being outside. As soon as you had breakfast, you were out the door.
Yeah.
There was a dirt pile calling your name, your tire swing, and I mean, just like I wasn't sitting in front of like a game system. I was outside, I was biking around, I was playing in the dirt, I was, playing in the stream back behind the house. trying to climb trees, build a fort, you know. Those are great times. They
Yeah,
really
yeah,
were.
yeah.
Yeah.
I I was, where Zuni is, we have plenty of mountains and hills that we could go climbing, and it
Hmm.
had a lot of history on it. Because it had a lot of significant spiritual parts of the whole area because of our when we migrated, that's where we ended up. So when we ended up, every there's a lot of places that had sacred, uh, not sacred, but special places of
Hmm.
what happened during our migrations, and we go out mountain climbing and all this kind of stuff. I remember this one hill looked perfect. It was all sand, but it looked like a perfect volcano. And there was like three of my two of my buddies. There was three of us that used to hang around, and we said, "Wow, I bet we need to go climb that. I bet that looks cool. We need to go climb it." And it was just like maybe I don't know how high it was, but we said, "Well, let's go." So we all went up there and on top. We go up, finally got up to the top because it was all made out of dirt. And
Hmm.
we struggled and we finally made it to the top and we all sat up on top and we just all like we were having a powwow, had our stick, we just screaming up on top of our lungs, and just singing and everything. And then coming back down the coming back down that little hill, it was still hot, tall. I mean, it was pretty tall. And so coming down, we just slid down because it was all sand. We just slid down and had a good time. It was quicker to come down than to climb it up. But when we come back down, my grandpa had a farm out nearby. So I said, well, let's go get some water where my grandpa's. I'm sure he's got some water. So we went over there and sure enough, he was there. And we said, I said, Grandpa, can we have some water? He said, you need to hold about three rows of my corn. Go hold that field, and I'll give y'all some corn. I mean, some water. I said, okay. So he gave us some water. We went out there. We hold it for him, and I don't know. I'm sure we didn't do a good job because we're trying to rush. But when we got that, we got it done and everything. So he gave us some more water. He says, thank you. He thanked us, and everything for, working his field. But then we told him, he says, you know that hill over there? He said, yeah. He says, then he looked at us and says, what about it? He says, you're not supposed to go there. I said, why not? He says, that's where the serpent hill is. If you go over there, you have to be part of that when the serpent comes to the
Hmm.
village. I said, you got to be the bird caller when that serpent comes. That's whose hill that belongs to is the bird caller. So if they find out you were up on top of the hill, those two bird callers in the village will come get you, and you'll end up replacing them one day. And I said, "Oh man," says so. We made our grandpa, you know, said, "Please don't tell anybody. We don't want to be bird callers." Please, I said, "Okay," he says, "but you got to come and help me for 3 days, hold my
Mm.
field for 3 days, and I won't tell anybody." Okay, so me and my friends went out there. Well, we were working our butts off, so he won't tell them because, and they do have a bird caller
Yeah.
when our serpent comes, and that two bird callers, I say if they know you were up there, boy, they'll grab you and you will replace them. I said, man, we don't want to do that because any commitment in Zuni like that is a lifetime commitment.
Hmm.
The only time you stop being that thing is when you're physically not capable of, or you're too old to where you can't do it anymore. And so, we used to get in trouble like that, but I think to this day nobody knows we were up there. They find out now, they'll probably come get us. Oh, are you gonna be a bird caller now? No.
Yes. Well, they know now.
Yeah, they know now, but it's all right. It's all right. But
Yeah. And
things like that, or places like that, we go out, we get. It's not really getting in trouble. It was just we just didn't know that a lot
right.
of places that uh, spiritual sites that or we go over there and we says, wow, Grandpa, we saw a shrine that had these little statues in it and prayer sticks and all this guy says, oh, don't go over there. I said, why? I said, that's where the war god is. I said, that's the war god shrine. You're not
Hmm.
supposed to be over there. Or if you're over there, you need to go back and give it some cornmeal and ask forgiveness for going into his territory, And I said, oh man. So he gave us cornmeal. We had to go all the way back and we say our little prayers and give it to him, come back and say, did y'all do it? Yeah, we did it. We did it. I said, okay. Don't ever go back over there. I said, all right. So we'll go somewhere else and we'll find other fun.
Mm, get in all kinds of trouble.
Yeah.
This was like a couple years ago, and I had just gotten back from Arizona, and my dad had gotten sick. So I was like, I cut short my trip and I came back. And I think this was in 21. And I was laying down, we were sleeping, me and my daughter were sleeping out in the futon out in the living room. And I was laying there and I was just kind of, we were almost falling asleep, but I could hear, you can feel when somebody walks by you, you know, if you're
Yeah.
laying on the couch sleeping, you can feel when somebody walks by you. And you can almost hear like, maybe the furnace is on, but when they walk by, it kind of muffles for a second and then it gets louder or goes back to the normal sound. So I was like, I heard somebody walk behind me. My head was kind of by the hallway, so I would feel them walk by and my hair kind of lifted. And I was like, oh, it's probably my mom. I'll just lay here and be quiet and pretend I'm sleeping so that, she doesn't start talking to me. And so I was laying there and I was trying to pretend to sleep and then I was like, wait a minute. I don't, I wasn't hearing like the floorboards creaking. There was a certain place by, the middle of the living room where it would creak. And I
Hmm.
wasn't hearing that. So I was like, okay. So I just opened one eye and I kind of looked and I guess it would be like looking at what looked like to me, but it was like fall. So it was like late August, early September. There would look like there was like, I don't know what they're called. I just know what they call them in my language, Wawatesis, which I guess you could look at the glow bugs, the bugs that glow,
Hmm.
lightning bugs or whatever
Yeah.
they call them. And they were in the living room. Except for they weren't like how they kind of they glow and then they stop glowing and then
Hmm.
you're like where'd they go and then all of a sudden they're glowing a little bit further away. They weren't doing this. They were continuously the lights were on and I just happened to kind of like look around and they were kind of like surrounding me and it was like I don't know what's going on here. Kind of scared a little bit. Not really scared. I wasn't scared like they were going to do something to me. It was just kind of like you're not expecting that. And I was like, what are these things here? And I didn't get any animosity or like they were going to hurt me or harm me in any way. Cause immediately I put out those sensors like, is this going to be something I got to jump up and, protect my child and myself from? I didn't get that. But it was like they were looking at me. And I was like laying there looking at them. And I was like, maybe if I just close my eyes, and maybe open them and they were still there. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I don't know what to do. No one had ever told me what to do if something like this happens. And so I don't know what it was, but it was almost like I just dozed off, like fell asleep or passed out or went somewhere astrally. But I was like, all of a sudden I woke up and it was like the sun was, rising and stuff and could hear the birds and stuff. I was like, wow, that was really weird. I'm like, what was that? I never had that happen again, but it was like the land that my parents, my mom still lives there, but when my dad passed away, it was out by Spirit Lake. They called it Spirit Lake. And there was a lot of really unusual things, like really odd things, like outside things. Like you'd see orbs and stuff outside.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I was just like, there was always like this weird light in the backyard. And my mom would be like, "Come over here now, stand here." And she would like squish me down so I was at her level, and she would push my face this way, and she'd be like, "Do you see that light? Look straight ahead." And I'd be like, "What is that?" And there would be this light, but there was like so many trees. There was just no way for a light to be shining through from wherever it was shining from. But it was really odd. And, I mean, there was like we get a lot of coyotes and wolves. And I mean, if you live out in the boonies, you knew the difference of what they sounded like and stuff. But and dog used to go crazy. But I want to go back. They say you make a full circle in life, and then when you get closer to, settling down, you want to go back to your roots. And that's where I grew up. I grew up in the woods, you know. I had a neighbor
Hmm.
I could see, as long as there wasn't any leaves on the tree. I mean, if there was leaves on the tree, I couldn't see him, but I mean, it was quiet. I mean, I think my dad said he saw like a UFO outside my window one morning, and he sat there and watched it for like 45 minutes and didn't even wake me up. I remember being so mad about that. Why didn't you wake me up? But lots of different things that happened on the reservation, and I know that it was something that was, kind of going on when my mom was a kid because she, her mother had tuberculosis. She was in a sanitarium and my mother was being raised by her aunt. And one night, my mom's like standing there and she happens to see this man. And, back then, and I was saying back then, there was trees everywhere. My mom said she'd climb a tree and there would be nothing but trees. So we're probably like thinking before, right around the 1940s, in middle of, central Minnesota. And there was nothing but trees. So she sees this man walking up in there. The houses were pretty far apart on the res, and just coming up the path to their house. So she told her aunt, and she said, "Oh, ay, ay," and she went running, and she like put a different dress on and combed her hair and came back out, and they were waiting for their guests to show up, and nobody came to the door. And my aunt kind of said, "Where'd you see this person at?" And so my mom's like, "Oh, I saw him right over there, I wasn't," she said, "So you're standing in the doorway and you saw them?" And she's like, "Yeah. I was standing in the doorway and I saw a man. It was a man and he was walking towards the house." And she was like, "So you're standing in the doorway and the light was on behind you? You had the light on?" And my mom's like, "I don't know what she's asking me all this." She was like, "Yes. Yes, auntie, and she's like, yeah, she's like, "Here." They shut the door and they locked it and everything. And she started telling her, she's like, "You're never supposed to stand in the doorway with, a light behind you and there's no light outside because you're going to see things that you aren't supposed to see, that you are not supposed to see." And so, I mean, my mom, even to this day, like if she's going to look outside, the first thing she does is she turns like the outside light on and then she'll turn the light off behind her, a direct light behind her so she's not shining out, and she'll look out the door, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I mean, it stuck with her because I think that kind of scared her. I mean, she's probably like maybe 9 years old, and
Huh.
and to be told something like that by your aunt, or yeah, who would be like your kind of like your mom.
Well, we experience all this, and some of the things that we are taught to do also, at that time it didn't make sense, but now that we look at it, it makes sense of why we were taught that way. And it's like you said about the shoes, you know, and you want to share that with them?
Oh gosh, yes. I was like a little kid. You put your shoes on and you put them on the wrong feet. Well, we call that, you're putting your shoes on backwards, even
Yeah.
though technically it's, left, right, right, left. And Grandma Shockbay would say, "Oh, you're gonna meet a bear." And I mean, so at some point they realized if you put your moccasins on the wrong feet and you go out into the woods, you'd meet a bear. So I mean, it's like it must be because of the moccasins, which I think that understanding a lot of people don't understand. There are some people that, of course, that are very highly, aligned with everything and knowledge. I know that your mind is so powerful that if you're like, "Oh my gosh, I had my shoes on backwards," I'm gonna meet a bear, and then you meet a bear. You're like, "Let me just put my shoes on the right feet." But
What, did you
it's
ever meet a bear?
I've never worn my shoes in the wrong feet. I mean,
Oh.
what was it? One time I went to work, I got dressed in the dark and I went to work and I had one blue shoe and one black shoe on. That was about it. But my daughters would see, actual spirits looking in from the windows at them. My oldest daughter, she would see that. I'd be like talking to her and she'd be facing the window. And all of a sudden I could see her, just her whole breathing would change and her eyes would dilate and and I'd be like, what's the matter? And she'd be like, there's somebody looking in the window, and I mean, I'd run out there with, a crowbar or a rolling pin, whatever, knife. And there would be nobody out there, you
Yeah.
know. And I think like one of the things, like she doesn't have that ability. Like when I see something, people can see it, So I mean, being around me, if you want to see something scary, come hang out with me for a
Come
little bit.
on.
Yeah. We were smudging my house because we lived like within close proximity to a graveyard. And so my daughter was seeing all these people that I wasn't seeing, that her brother wasn't seeing. And she was having issues with night terrors and stuff. So the kids were at school and my niece was home with me. She was staying with me. I said, we need to smudge the house. And I lived like in a 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, like trailer house, like a really big one. And so we kind of started the one side of the house was the kids' room where they had the 2 bedrooms and then a bathroom, a Jack and Jill bathroom. So we started there and we kind of did like a whirl and we had the front door open. Well, at this time, my mom's coming in. She can smell the sage and she knows what we're doing. So she's like, we could hear her. And we're trying to, holler at her, but like, still keep doing the prayers and everything that we're doing. And she didn't hear us. So, like I could hear her voice getting quieter and quieter. I was like, oh, where she went. So we came out in the living room and we're like, the medicine man said, make sure you open everything. So if you have like cabinets, refrigerator, boxes, everything, make sure that you open them because I was like, I think it was back in the day, my mom said that someone forgot to open, they had the bread box back in the day, a metal bread box,
Uh-huh.
and someone forgot to open it when they were saging, and they said it was bouncing on the counter and making noises and stuff, and they got really scared. So she said, make sure you always open everything. So I'm like opening the oven, I mean, I open everything, every drawer, every door, everything. And I come out and my mom was like talking, like looking in the bedroom talking. And I'm like, we're right behind you. She was at the one end of the house, we were on the other. And so we came up and she's like, oh, I thought you were in your room because I could hear voices and noises in here. And I was like, no, we were in the other side of the rooms. Oh, she was all just go sit out here. She's till you're done. So we went around and we were smudging some more. And I was like walking past and I was like, oh, the furnace. And so my niece is standing there and I was like, hold on. And so I took the furnace door off and I gave her the eagle feather and the bowl and everything was still burning, which was telling me we weren't done yet. And so I take the door off and I grab the thing from her and I go once like this into that little furnace area. And all of a sudden over my head, it looked like Spider-Man in a black suit. So it was like a shadow person. It was in
Hmm.
that furnace room. It was the one that was making all the noise that my mother thought it was us. It wasn't us. It was that thing. And I watched it like crawl on top of the ceiling and then it just kind of went through like right over the door in the hallway. And trailer houses aren't that tall, so the doorway was like right there just, and I didn't say nothing. I was just like, okay. So I put the furnace door back on and we come back around the corner. My mom is sitting there on the stools at the island and she's like, how'd it go? And my niece is like, I think I saw something. And I was like, me too. And she's like, did you guys talk to each other? And we're like, mm-mm, we didn't say nothing. So she takes my niece in the other room. She's like, I want to ask her what she saw and then come back and ask you. Okay. So I was sitting out there and I was like, I wasn't scared, because I already smudged. Everything was gone. I witnessed it leaving. So
Yeah.
she comes back in and she's like, what did you see? And I told her, I said, it was like Spider-Man in like a totally black spider suit. and it was crawling on the ceiling, and it crawled out of the furnace room, crawled right across the ceiling, across the hallway, and out the door. And she looks at me and she said, "That's exactly what, my niece
Mm.
said, what your niece said." I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so weird." Um, I mean, stuff like that I see, like spirits and stuff like that, or else I'll catch him out of the corner of my eye. I kept seeing this little boy in my house when my baby was just a baby too, and he was always playing with something, and it was like, so I was like, okay, I see this little boy. He's wearing like blue overalls. He's got like a little jacket on, and he's got a hat. And I was like, I don't know. I must be just losing it, And turns out that the house that we lived in, the people that owned the grocery store in town, they were older people and they had lived, that was their house. And at the time, their daughter had gotten married and had a baby, and he was about 3 or 4 years old. And they were down by the river, and he had slipped in, and they jumped in after him. They could not find him. He ended up drowning and passing away. And that was the little boy that was in the house. And I was like, he's about the age of my kid. My kid was about 2.5, 3. And they're like, yeah, that's about how old he was when he passed away. So I mean, I just seeing these things too. I wouldn't want to say these things, but seeing, spirits and stuff
Mm.
really like made me feel unsettled when I was younger. I was like, I don't want to
Yeah.
see, because I didn't see them in the way they looked before anything. I would see them, where it was like terrifying to me. And
Wow.
I was like in New York, and I remember once I was like 2 nights in a row, they were coming through the walls and they were like talking to me, and they were like zombies, look like zombies. They're in various states of deterioration. And it was like I'd wake up and I'd be, oh my God, and I'd start whimpering, and my boyfriend would just whack me and be like, go back to sleep. I was like, there's like these things walking in, And then it was like, okay, I need to figure out. I lived downstairs where the attic apartment where I lived in the building, there was like a male witch that lived up there. And he and I were pretty cool. He would come down and we would have tea. He would bring tea and I'd have my swamp tea, and we would like, kind of exchange out, see, just hang out and do medicine, hang out. And he'd tell me things that, was very close to what a lot of the medicine man would tell me about certain herbs and stuff. So we all hung out and it was really cool. Um, but he was telling me, there's certain things around. And it was like, yeah, there is. I was like, man, my daughter can see them like you're standing right in front of me. It looks very physical to her, like
Mm.
a real person. And I asked her a question. I think she was about mid 20s. And I said, "Hey, honey," I was like, "Do you still see ghosts and spirits?" And she looked at me. She didn't say a word, but she shook her head, and I knew she was lying to me. But she can see them, like, and they're like decent shape, but they're just scary to her. I see them in scary shape, and I just like I can't. Sometimes it's hard for me,
Yeah.
you know. And I remember seeing them when I was a kid, and I'd be terrified to the point where I would just like black out the whole thing. Like I don't remember seeing that. People are like, "You were telling me," and I'm like, "I don't remember that." you know but it was like I was like terrified of these like five senses, when you were saying like if you don't see very good, which I have glasses, eyeglasses, reading glasses, contacts, the whole shebang, and since when I think I just finally put a pair of contacts in and I have my readers on now, but it was like I couldn't see. Everything was kind of really fuzzy. And
Yeah.
so, in not being able to see, my hearing just like, and I sent you a message, and I was like making coffee in the other room, and I had signed on to Zoom, and I heard your voice, and I was like, oh my gosh, did he sign up? It's really early. And I came in here and it was like you hadn't signed on yet, but I heard your
Mm.
voice. And I heard you say two words. And it was like kind of like the first word was a little, I couldn't quite hear all of it, but I heard something about timing. And I was like, did you just say something? I was like, I said, I could have swore I heard you say abstract timing or subliminal timing. And I was like, and that was in my good ear too, not the ear that, well, I hear a lot in this ear, more so than this one. But I hear like my kids, and I'll hear like my kid right, sounds like right in my ear, like she's right there, and she's like, "What?" And I'll be like, "What's that?" Um, Another time too, I was on Zoom and everybody was muted. And I was talking about this situation and it was kind of, not really giving me emotional distress, but it was very emotional. And I took a deep breath and you know how you go, like that. And I heard somebody ask me, "Are you okay?" But I like looked up at the screen and like everybody was muted. So like afterwards, I asked the person that I said, "I heard you ask me when I was like really upset. Are you okay? Did you ask me that?" And they were like, "Yeah." It was kind of like in my head, I'm like thinking, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And it was like, I heard that. So, yeah, I totally believe you. And then also you were talking about a medicine man that was blind in both eyes or an elder that was blind in both eyes. And my medicine man, he was blind in one eye. And it was like, which eye was it? I can't remember. I think it was he was blind in this eye, or it might have been blind in this eye. I can't remember. But he would like see things, in that eye, and he would like
Mhm.
tell me what he was seeing, and I would be like, "Oh my gosh," it's like you are exactly 100% right. So I mean, I know it wasn't just a parlor trick or anything, I mean, not that I would ever say an elder was doing that to me, but I mean, you get a lot of people that are just, even when we say stuff, they're like, you can hear the audible eye roll. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not trying to be, I don't think of myself as a prophet. It's just I get information.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm just sitting there and it was like someone just whacks me in the head with it. And it was like, whoa, this is going on, and I'll talk about it and I'm just so invested in it and they're just like, where did that come from? You were fine
Yeah.
15 minutes ago. So yeah, I mean, I have the clairaudient that's coming in a little bit more now, but I've been doing like meditation and exercises to be able to, because I pushed it all away and closed it off as a child. So now I had blocked it for so many years. And because, a lot of the stuff was I would consider at that time I didn't understand it. So you fear things you don't understand. And I was very fearful of it. And so, when things would pick up, because I was like, "Oh, every house I live in, it's haunted." And they're like, "Are you sure it's not you?" Yes, it was me. It was me. I'm not saying I was haunted, but I'm just saying that you have to put out like these rules. Don't come bugging me after 8 o'clock. If you got a question, wait till morning.
Yeah.
Don't come walking in my house. I don't want to come walking out of my bedroom and bump into a spirit.
Yeah.
And they used to just come in and scare the what out of me, I remember one time I was like got up to use the bathroom and you know how you're just like kind of dozing off, because you just woke up out of a deep sleep to use the bathroom. And I'm laying, and it was all of a sudden this boy, like he had kind of dark hair, and I remember he had really like ghostly pale skin, and he had these shadows under his eyes. And he like looked up at me because I'm like kind of like and he like looked up at my face and I instantly woke up because I felt him. And I was like, "Dude, little dude,
Go on.
don't do that."
Shame on you watching me. No.
I know. I'm sitting in the toilet, gosh, or else, they just kind of they because they're not hampered by physical limitations such as a wall or
No.
anything like that. In fact, they have easier access in the windows. And there was like something that someone always told me. They're like, "Don't sleep with your window open at night." And this was something that another tribal member had said to me. And I was like, "Well, why?" And whenever I ask that, I don't know why. Nobody ever tells me why. But, because they'll sense that. They'll sense you. They come in through the window.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to be like really, all right, no nonsense, and just tell them you can't be in here after a certain time. I don't want you in here. I'm not going to pay you any attention. And most of the time, I'll just boot you right out. You know, don't come in here. Don't scare my children. Don't terrorize my pets. Be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't had any problems since, and I haven't lived in any haunted houses since.
Well, back home, we have certain ways of, presenting ourselves too.
Hmm.
You talk about at nighttime. At nighttime, back when I was a kid, we never used to lock our doors. We never used to lock our doors, and because people knew that there are ways to present yourself in people's houses. Like if
Hmm.
you're a visitor, you just walk up, open the door, and walk right in. And because most time, most of somebody would always be sitting in a living room, the family room or whatever you call them, living room, and when you walk in, they'll greet you, and
Hmm.
you have to greet them. You just say, "Good evening." You don't say that. It's like a little prayer that you say, and that's when you know that these are humans, not spirits,
Right.
because they will come in there blessing you, and like in the evening they will say "Koto sunna kenapkia," meaning may the blessings of the sun, residing on this on its ready to go under, go make it night, may that blessing be upon you, and you say thank you for your blessings. May you have the blessings of the sun going down to you, and then you say, you know, uh, that's when you say they're there to visit. Well, if they're there to visit, they'll say, all right, uh, you know, are you here for somebody or are you just here to visit? And then they'll tell you. But
Hmm.
if you're going to announce somebody's death, you go up to the door and you knock, and when you knock, people in the house will say, "Uh-oh, we're getting some bad news," and
Hmm.
everybody will come to the living room, and then announcements will be made. So and
Hmm.
so passed away last night or this morning. The wake is going to be tomorrow night. And so I say, okay, thank you. And then you knock and you come in, you make your announcements, and after that, then you leave. With the blessing. So now netong taking ng kokshaawan to meaning that I am leaving your presence. May the moon, the stars at night, blessings be upon you as you rest tonight. Is when you say that, and then the people will respond. May the blessings of the moon and stars be upon you also. And so you know you depart. But when you come to make an announcement like a death, you knock on the door and you wait for a while, then you enter.
Hmm.
If you just don't knock and enter, you knock,
Right.
you wait, and then you enter. And then you make your announcement, and then you bless them, and you leave. Things like that, it still goes on. It still goes on back home, because that's the way, we're raised and everything. And, you know, we don't see it on obituary saying, oh man, so and so passed away. No, we don't see
No,
that,
you knew. Yeah,
you
you knew
know,
before that.
yeah. So, and things like this on the reservation is so different. And we shared some good stories now,
Mhm.
and I we got to save some for next time. But believe it or not, we've been on almost an hour.
Almost
But
an hour.
yeah,
Well,
you
how
know,
does I don't know what Lakota think of, or Zuni, sorry, not Lakota. I'm in the Lakota area, but like owls. Like I remember my mother always telling me that if you see an owl during the day, and it used to like kind of like, you even if you thought it was an owl, oh, Oh God, because you're not, they're nocturnal, so you're not used to seeing them during the day, but they were coming to deliver a message, and sometimes it wasn't always, the best news. But, or else, like, I think my mom said she was leaving the house one time and it was like early in the morning and she heard someone call her name. And she's like, it sounded like it was just like right around the house, like right around the corner. And she was like, I didn't say nothing, because you don't answer. You just wait to see what's going to be said or what's going to be shared. So, I think that's like important. And she found out like one of her friends passed away that day
Yeah.
and had come to, you know, call her name and say goodbye. That was the same thing that my father did when he passed away too, because I had missed it. I had come home and I was going to go back down to Ramsey the next day, the next morning, and he passed away 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like frantic because, I have these barriers set up because I was so scared of ghosts and spirits and stuff. And I'm in the bathroom and I'm talking to a friend of mine who's a really good medium channeler, talks to spirits and stuff. And I was like, I want you to tell my dad something or tell my dad something from me. And he goes, why don't you tell him yourself? He's right next to you. And I was like, I, you know, and I was like, well, I'm in the bathroom, and I'm standing right by the door and the door is open just a little bit. So I'm like, well, no one's here on this side. So it'd have to be on this side. So I kind of open the door. And as I open the door, I see my cat and she's like looking at something in front of the door that I'm not quite seeing yet. And so I open the door all the way and I'm like looking down at her and I see a pair of khaki pants. I see the legs. I see, the waist. And then it was like smoke. It just disappeared. And I was like, well, what the heck, And I was like, was that my dad? And my friend was like, yeah, and then I was like, I want you to, this is what I want him to know. And I said it, that I was like extremely proud to be his daughter and just all this other stuff that, you just don't get a chance to tell people when they're still here.
Yeah.
So I said it and he's like, he's very happy and he wants to tell you that, that was absolutely perfect what you said. And the next day I go down and we started the 3-day fire and I go down there. My son is in charge of it and he had to get the HOA because they were like, what's going on here? Like, we have to have this fire because my father passed away. And they weren't like privy to it. They're like, why? And we explained it and they're like, oh, okay, that's fine. As long as someone's out here with it all the time. And we're like, no problem. And I'm talking to my daughter. I just come in, I'm bringing in food and everything, because we had a lot of people coming through the
Yeah.
house. And um, I tell my daughter what happened the night before when I saw the khaki pants. And she was like, looked at me for a really long time. This is a daughter that can see spirits. And she was like, Mom, after you left, the nurses came back in and they changed Grandpa out of the flannel pants that he was wearing. He was wearing his favorite blue flannel pants. And they took those off because, he had wet through them. And they changed him into a different pair of pants. And she's like, they're khakis, Mom. You didn't know that. How did you know that? And it was just like, how do you think I knew it? I knew it because he came to say goodbye. I told him when I left, I was like, I don't care what time it is. If you have to leave, don't wait for me, but just, come and say goodbye. So he did,
Mhm.
you know, and I'm just so grateful for that.
My experiences on death like that is my mom, you know, she went to the heart doctor. The heart doctor says, "Oh, you're gonna live another 100 years because your heart's so strong, everything like that." And my sister had taken her all the way to Albuquerque to see a heart specialist,
Mm-hmm.
And as they were driving back, she called me. She said, "Son, I'm going home." And I said, "I know you're coming home because I was taking care of her, because
Mm-hmm.
and my sister just said I'd take her to her doctor's. I said, "Okay, go." So they left, and I stayed home by myself. And then we had, I said, "Mom, I'm cooking, so yes, yes, you can go ahead and when you come home, I have supper ready for you." I said, "No, I'm going home." I said, I know you're coming home. I know you're coming home, Mom. It says, so when you're ready, when you come home, when y'all get close, call me and I'll heat up the food and, I have warm food for y'all when you come home. She goes, well, I'm tired. I'm going home. And I said, okay, Mom, I love you. And I says, I love you too, son. Thanks for everything you've done for me. I mean, I spoiled my mom at her latter years because, I mean, even to as much as, when she was ready for bed, I knew she goes to bed like at 9 o'clock. So I get her blankets and I throw them in the dryer and I get them
Mhm.
warm, and then I go over there. As soon as she lay down, I get that warm blankets on her. And she says, "Oh, son, you're the best. You're the best," And I said, "Mama, I love you," and I do that, and she's and that night, normally, what she would do is, like she'll tell me, she says, "Son, I want to eat some fish tonight." I said, "Okay, I'll get some fish and I'll cook some fish for you, and you can have fish for supper tonight." She says, "Okay, thank you." And her coffee and tea has to be boiling hot. I think will be boiling in her cup, and she drink it. I said, "Damn, what? Don't you burn yourselves?" No, I'm used to that. You know,
It's me too.
and she could, and she killed. And I said, "It's hot, huh?" I said, "No, it's okay. It's good. It's good." I said,
Yeah.
"Mom, it's just boiling." But she liked really hot coffee. Everything
Hmm.
got to be hot, fresh. And so, I told her, I said, "Okay, Mom." And she would eat whatever I cooked for her that night. And then before she get off the table, tomorrow for breakfast, I think I want French toast with 2 eggs and some toast and coffee. She'd always tell me what she want for the next day.
Hmm.
And then when I cook her breakfast, she'll say, "Okay," because the seniors would bring her lunch, so I didn't have to worry about lunch. But
Right.
supper time, she'll goes, "Well, supper, I think I want a beef stew with cornbread." I said, "Okay, Mom." I'll go. She would always tell me ahead what she want,
Hmm.
but Uh, the day she went to Albuquerque, she says she didn't tell me what she wanted for dinner, and I said because I knew they'll be home by then. So I said, Mom didn't tell me what she wanted. So I said, I know, I'll make her favorite stew, mulligan stew, which means all the leftovers in the refrigerator just put
Yeah.
in a pot. We call it mulligan stew. So I did. I made her mulligan stew and made some fresh tortillas for her. And so she called me. She says, "I'm going home." I said, "I know you're coming home, Mom." And then after I hung up, it dawned on me what she had said. And I said, you know, like I told her, I said, well, when you get there, tell Dad I love him and give him a hug for me. It's all I said in my mind.
Hmm.
And right after she called me, she called my brother in Albuquerque and says, "I'm going home." And then she looked at my sister. And she made all the calls. She looked at my sisters. She said, "I'm tired. I'm going home." And my sister says, "Oh, well, you take a nap. Here's a blanket." I put a blanket, covered her with a blanket, and she says, "Yeah, I'm tired. I'm going home." And then just that was it. Got her last breath. My sister stopped on the interstate, and her car had that what do you call it when you can just press the button and you can call 911 or whatever.
Oh, on Star?
OnStar, yeah,
Yeah.
OnStar. She had that and she called it, and of course, state police was right there right away, and they got my mom out and they were doing CPR and everything. They had a helicopter flying and everything, and you know she was already gone. There was
Hmm.
nothing they could do.
No.
And my sister said, "Well, the heart doctor told her." I said, "What? Her heart's okay and everything like that." But we don't do autopsies, so we didn't know what the cause of death was. But she was just tired. She knew she was tired, and she
Hmm.
called everybody and wanted to see everybody, and then she said goodbye, and that's all she did. I'm going home, and that was it. And then my Texas mom, I've known her since I was like fifth grade.
Hmm.
She was 93 years old after she had a major stroke, and my brother from a different mother, Mark, called me up and says, "Mother had a stroke. She's turning for the worse. 93 years old, and she's turning for the worse." And I said, "Well, let me talk to her." And she says, "She probably can't even remember you. She's on stroke. She can't even, her eyes are not even the same, da da da, and everything."
Hmm.
I said, "Wake her up and let me talk to her." So she's just having to, I guess, roll on her bed. And so Mark, my brother, Mark, he's a white guy. Mark looked at her and says, "Mother." I said, "Yeah." I says, you know Greg? He said, yeah, Greg Yawakia, my son. He said, he's on the phone. He says, let me talk to him. So he gave her the phone and she said, hi, son. I said, hey, mother, how you doing? Oh, I'm fixing to, I think the Lord's calling me. I'm fixing to go. Because she always said that. When the Lord calls me, don't hold me back. I'm going to go. So I said, okay, mother. He says, yeah, the Lord's calling me. He said, all right, well, send me an angel. And I said, I just want to say I love you. He says, oh, son, I love you too. You don't have to say it because you showed me. Because even I went to Texas to take care of her. I
Mm-hmm.
cleaned her house, I cooked her food and everything because all they gave her was McDonald's or Burger King. That's
Ew.
all they would drop her off for, And when I got there, I cook her food, and she loved it. And again, like I did my mom, I throw the blankets in the dryer and warm them up and put it on her. And she didn't sleep on her bed; she slept on a recliner. She loved the recliner because she could watch Dr. Phil all day long, all
Mhm.
night long, even though it's a rerun. She'll watch him. And but she just laid on the recliner. Her dogs, she had two dogs, a Chinese pug and a little mutt, I call it. But anyway, they're both of them. They would sleep with her, and she enjoyed that. So, I know that tells me that we know when we're going to go. And so my mama told me, she says, I'm at peace with it because at least I told her I love her, and that's why to me, she just told me, she says, keep that love going. So now I don't hesitate to tell anybody I love them,
Mhm.
guys, girls, whatever, men,
Mhm.
men kind of feel awkward, but I say, hey, it comes from the heart.
Right.
And now a lot of people that I come across, I tell them, you're a brother from a different mother, but I love you know, and or if our signal is just happy heart, meaning that you're sending love to them, and so these are, it's just some of the things that, my mama told me and my mom showed me. So anyway, this is what I had just been going through a lot, but it was fun. This is the best years of our lives. I don't care what's going on in Washington D.C. Everything. This is life. It's fun, and I think next time we need to talk about that. How
Yeah.
we were prepared for this now, and
Yeah.
and I'm excited about that.
Yeah. I
And
knew
so
from a young age, like age 3, I knew that I was here for this.
you were here for this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, at the age 3, I was like that too because you and I both got abducted at that age.
Right.
You know, that's how we connected because when I first heard about you and everything, and I heard you say that on one of your podcasts, I said, "Wow, wow, I got to get a hold of her." It's
Well,
like, yeah,
that's how I felt
technology
about you
nowadays.
too. I was like,
Yeah,
I'm
I didn't
emailing
send no
him.
smoke signals, but good old Wi-Fi or whatever. But
Yeah.
but you know, I feel like I've known you a long time, and maybe past life we knew each other. I don't know, but we connected real quick, and here we are doing podcasts, and I really enjoy them because and so now we got to save for the next time, okay?
Hmm. For
So
sure. For sure.
and to the people, I'm gonna put this on Premiere and give us a little bit of time, and we'll be on chat. If you have
Hmm.
any questions, you know, watch the channel, like and subscribe. And she's probably going to put it on her channel, which is which one?
Oh,
Indigenous.
Rumble. That is Prime Declassified, Prime Indigenous. So
Oh, okay. And then, do you like and subscribe on that channel too?
yeah, I do it
Okay.
like with
Oh,
Rumble. It's on
okay.
Rumble. So
Okay. Okay. All right. So, thank you for watching. We enjoy you all, and we're going to continue this at least once a week, and hopefully, what we're sharing that you all learn from it. And you want to say anything else for a close?
hopefully when you're listening to it, you realize that we were all brought up kind of the same way, that we are very close. We're all connected and we're all in one tribe. So then that's the human tribe.
not the Neanderthals or St.
No,
Moses.
Cro-Magnon. Nope. Mm-mm.
All right, all right. Well, listen, you have a good night and
Thank you.
thank you. And again, we'll see you next time and next week.
Hmm.
And don't get off yet till because I got something to say. Okay.
Okay, I
So
won't.
anyway, all right. We love y'all. Y'all take care. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
watching.
everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.